I'm just waiting for it to connect to LinkedIn.
Oh, you gotta give me this system.
Almost there. Okay, let me just double check. Okay, looks like we are up and running. And hey, y'all, welcome to the Spotlight DMV and another edition of our signature series, Behind the Event. This is where we go beyond the flyer and talk to the visionaries making things happen behind the scenes. Whether it's festivals, galas, or community pop ups, we're bringing you the real story, the inspiration, and what it takes to build something meaningful in the DMV and all across the nation. And today I am so excited to shine the spotlight on someone whose work is shaking up the wine world in the best way. She's a nationally recognized sommelier, a cultural disruptor, and the founder of the Hue Society and Wine and Culture Fest. Please help me welcome the incredible Tahiirah Habibi. Welcome.
Thank you. That was such a kind introduction. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you here. And before we move forward with our discussion, I want to introduce people to you and who you are and who you're about. So, guys, I want y'all to see this video. I was scrolling this morning and I came across it and I was like, oh my gosh, this has to be a part of the conversation. So, let me play this for y'all.
Love black people. You know what I love? What I love? Black people. You know what I love out loud? Black people. And I love black people so much that I created a whole festival about black people. It's a wine festival. It's called the Wine and Culture Fest. For me, having been in this industry and studying wine since 2009, I have been to enough wine events to understand that we needed something for us where we didn't have to trade ourselves, where we didn't have to code switch, where we can enjoy some really good high quality wine and dance and listen to our music and eat our food. I knew that we needed something that was for us, centered around us and with our products. So the Wine and Culture Fest. We're in our 7th year. This year it's going to be amazing. It's in DC on the National Harbor and everybody's coming. So I'm hoping that you're coming. We have so many amazing guests this year, so many things to do. So if you want to come and just find some joy and be with your people and just have like a genuinely good time, come to the Wine and Culture Fest. I can't wait to see you. I can't wait to hug you. And I cannot wait to wine and wine this year.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Made my heart jump with joy. Welcome, my sister.
Thank you for having me.
So let me say, if folks did not know about who you were and what you're all about, after watching that, they should know exactly who you are and what you're all about. I was in prepping for this conversation. I was listening to some of your previous interviews and reading articles about you. And I was like, man, this woman has been so intentional about the work in the wine industry and about wanting to bust down doors at a point where at times you were the only one in those spaces. And so let's talk about that. Let's go back to the beginning and talk about who you are and how you got into the wine industry. And so tell us a bit about, growing up.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in North Philly. I always like to emphasize that, not just Philly, but North Philly, because I think it's important for people to see a representation of what it looks like. And it's not just the things that they show you on like the social media or the news. Um, I went to Penn State University, and I've just always kind of been a natural leader. And so, because I was in a lot of leadership positions there, um, I ended up in spaces where, I was one of the only black people. And it's not uncommon, especially back in, 2005, 2001,
Yeah.
2003, to be the only black person in a class or a room or something like that. That was not uncommon at all, especially at, a PWI. But I was as often in those rooms, and I was old enough to drink, and that's what they would serve, wine. Wasn't the best wine, but it was wine. And I've also always been acutely aware of my surroundings and how the way you move through the world is viewed as a black person and as a black woman. And so
Yeah.
I quickly picked up on being able to handle myself with wine and it leading to power versus, you know, grimacing or being like, oh, this is gross, whatever, or I don't drink that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I learned very quickly how to use it as a tool. So when I decided to, that wasn't my goal then. I was a broadcast journalism major. I wanted to be
Mm.
on TV.
Okay.
Um, but when I did decide to go into it, that was the angle that I looked at it, the lens that I looked at it from. It wasn't like, oh my God, I love wine so much I can't live without it. It's like, okay, this is a tool. We're looking at a multi-billion-dollar industry. I don't see anybody who looks like me in it, and I definitely don't see anybody from my socioeconomic status involved. And so I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn this wine stuff. I'm gonna take it back to the hood. And
Yeah.
that was it. That was my goal. I'm going to take it right back to my community, which, includes a whole different, we're not a monolith, so it's a lot of different people, but I'm from the hood. So I was taking it back to the hood. And that's, and I still, to this day, that's my thing.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what you're saying, is what people that have not been introduced to wine have experienced, because it was the same for me. When you get a career and now you're networking and in circles where people are talking about wine and the types that they like, and you have no clue, you don't know the difference. Maybe you had some arbor mist or something like
Mm-hmm.
something like that, but you don't really know too much about wine, and it can be very intimidating.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and there was someone that I worked with that was, they were a really like a wine lover. And I remember one thing that they said to me that kind of set me free. They were like, the best wine is the wine that you like. And I was like, that's absolutely correct. Like, to step into a room and feel like just because you don't know, that means that there's you're less valuable or something like that. Like, that really set me free from looking at myself like that when we're talking about wine and in those types of discussions. And well, so as a part of what I read about you, when you started getting into wine, that's when you began to work in the hospitality industry. Talk to us about that piece of it.
Um, I was I was working as a hostess when I started studying wine officially. I worked for a hospitality organization, and they offered free wine classes. I know they wasn't offering them to me. It was really for like the bartenders and the cocktail servers and stuff like that. But I was like, well, who's gonna stop me? So I signed up for the classes. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. I'm very big on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're not harming somebody. And so I signed up for the class, and it just kind of went from there. I ended up getting taking advanced classes, but it was a different world than where we are now with the wine space. There was an organization that everybody kind of bowed down to, and it was a big indoctrination. Everybody, you were not considered a real wine professional or legit if you didn't have a certain set of certifications. So it didn't even matter
Mm-hmm.
what I had studied or how smart I was. And I wanted to, again, I'm ambitious. I want to be at the top. Like, if I'm not at the
Yeah.
top, I'm like, I'm gonna help where I can, but if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. So, my goal was to be number one, and I studied a lot. Ooh, sorry, I studied a lot for that. And so I ended up moving to Miami. Um, within 2 weeks of finishing my classes, I had decided, like, all right, well, I did everything I could do in Philly. I'm either going to move to Miami or I'm going to move to California. And I flipped the coin, and it was Miami. So I
Mm.
moved there, no place to live. I
Wow.
didn't have an apartment when I got there. I was just like so hell bent on being a Psalm that it just did. Like, I was like, and I'm a very spiritual person in the sense, like, I fully believe everything is always going to fall into place for me.
Yeah.
And if I walk that way, then I know that things will start aligning. And so, yeah, I moved there with no apartment. I had transferred my job to become. I was a cocktail server, on a rooftop in Miami while I'm studying, you know, flashcards in my bra all the time. Like, everybody that ever met me during that time knew I was going to be a Psalm. And people still joke about those flashcards because that was it. I was going to be a Psalm. It's very easy to kind of get sucked into the lifestyle in Miami. You can make a lot of money. You
Mm-hmm.
can make a lot of money as a server and as a cocktail server and all the rest of that stuff. And you kind of get stuck there. And I was just like laser focused. I'm going to be a Psalm. And so, um, because everybody knew that when the opportunity came, I got a call that the St. Regis was opening in December. And somebody was like, "Hey, we know you want to be a Psalm. They're looking for a Psalm." I'm like, "All right, let's do this."
Wow.
And I went and interviewed, and they offered me a cocktail server position. And again, laser focus. I was like, "Nah, I'm good. Even if it's at the St. Regis, if I will be a cocktail server, I'll just be a cocktail server where I'm at. I'm going to be a Psalm." And so,
Mm-hmm.
like a couple of days later, they called me back and offered me a Psalm job, and so I ended up opening the St. Regis.
Wow.
But yeah, it's not like I think you just have to believe in yourself and believe
Yeah.
enough that people are going to look at you and assume and think one thing, and then you just have to course correct yourself and worry about what nobody else thinks. Who do you think? Who are you? You
Mm-hmm.
decide who you are. And that was my goal. I'm going to be a Psalm, and nothing was going to stop me at that point. So that was it. It was many obstacles in between there that I haven't like brought up, but yeah.
No, that is a powerful, powerful testimony in knowing your value, right? Um, as and what you're talking about believing in yourself, that's what leads to the opportunities that you're seeking. Because can you imagine, like, the St. Regis is offering someone a position, and I'm sure the way that they phrase, oh, you can start here, and it
Mm-hmm.
could lead to X, Y, and Z, and to be like, nah, I'm good.
Right.
I'm good. And then to get that call back, like, what were you thinking when they called you back and were like, you know what, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yep,
I
stand
love
your
that.
ground. Like, stay the course. I've been saying stay the course since since I was probably like 18. But it's just the affirmation for myself, just a reminder consistently, just stay the course. because people just throw so many things at you
Yeah.
all the time, and you just have to, even when things are going like so bad and so wrong, I just remind myself like stay the course. Like, because if you're going to jump every single time, and if you're going to become agitated and irritated every single time something rubs you, or kind of pushes you somewhere, you'll never be polished. You'll never be polished enough to get where you're going. Like, you want to be smooth, and I'm very big on nervous systems. Like,
Mm.
those are, I guess, so I'm big on affirmations. I teach my daughter a lot of affirmations. I'm big on keeping your nervous system, trying to find ways to always calm your nervous system, but also making sure that your vibrations are on the level of things that you want.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't you can't be wanting something up here and be vibrating down here, and fear is vibrating down here, so you have to
Yeah.
like figure out how to climb your way back up to that vibration of the things that you want, and that's just, for me, just how you manifest.
No, and that's 100% it. And that's why that video that I played in the beginning really resonated with me, because it is important to understand who you are, right? Because then that sets the structure, the framework for
Mm-hmm.
what you will and won't do. You know,
Yeah.
people can't just come and say,
Or
"Oh, well, this is
accept.
what I'm going to give you." Exactly, exactly. And I think for, especially for Black women, because I've heard a lot of stories over and over and over again, especially over these last 5 years. You know, going through the pandemic and experiencing certain things, just a shift in that mindset of, I've been working and they've been throwing all this work at me and I've been doing all this and that. And then when time comes for the raise or the position or promotion, it's something else. But we were
Yep.
doing all that work in hopes that it would lead to the next step, right?
That happened to me a lot. Like, I'm not gonna get on here and pretend like, oh, I've always been, in that zone, and I've always, like, this version of me came after a lot of trauma, and
Yeah.
I mean like work trauma, and accepting things and insults, and being devalued, and because people were not used to, they weren't used to seeing a Black person
Yeah.
on the floor as a wine expert, and they damn sure wasn't used to seeing a Black woman on the floor. And so it became a joke in a lot of ways to people. It was very puzzling to them. It was very off-putting. I normalized a lot of that. And in Miami, I was probably, if not the only Black Sob or the first Black Sob, I was one
Mm.
of them. Like, the word, so that was very off-putting for people. They were like, again, this is back in 2011, 2012,
Yeah.
2013, like that very early time when it was okay to really abuse your workers because the guest was always right. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if the guest had money, the guest was always right. So I took a lot of abuse for sure. And I took a lot of things that I would never to this day take. But that was also part of finding myself because I didn't 100% believe that I belonged there. I knew I wanted to be there and I knew it was a goal to be there. But then once I got there was still the work. There was still the consistent, like, you do know your stuff. You do deserve to be here. You are very smart. You're very, and I'm
Yeah.
actually really good at my job, just naturally because I have the natural palate for a lot of different things. But I had to convince myself of that every day because I was
Mm.
also, the world was constantly telling me, yeah, you don't, this is a fluke, you don't belong here, like, you're, they just hired you just to hire you. When you think about the St. Regis or something like luxury space, they don't just hire people just to
Right.
hire them, right? But you don't get that framework. I had to build that framework for myself. And when I finally did get to the point where I left there and I went to work at Michael's Genuine, which was a wonderful experience. And they're also two very different spaces. And so I had this like incredibly well-rounded wine experience and background because St. Regis was all about luxury wines, vintage
Yeah.
wines. You just learn so much. And you're drinking some of the most expensive wines in the world, because these people are buying them, or like regular days for lunch and stuff like that. And then Michael's Genuine was such a different experience because it's more geeky, right? These now you're talking about wines that are, we're talking about soils, we're talking about grower champagnes, we're talking about, um, discovering winemakers and all of that kind of stuff. But I think the catalyst with the commonality between the two of them was I didn't see black brands.
Yeah.
Michael's Genuine had a couple, um, but genuinely, and there were not a lot of black brands that were being consistently distributed. And I remember the first time I had gotten into a magazine, I got into Ocean's Drive. I was top 5 female somms in South Florida. Me, little old me, again, just didn't think that I belonged there, but I just went along with it. I felt like I was just going along with things. Meanwhile, I was actually earning them. And once I changed that framework, I started to understand that. But when I did the photo shoot for that, I was terrified of using a wine that that was black owned, because I was like, they're going to pull the shoot. Like that's
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
like, that was a frame of mind then. But um, my next major shoot, I made sure that I used the black wine, and from that point on, I broke the lid. That fear was gone, and I was terrified then too. Same thought process. Oh my God, they're going to pull this shoot. And meanwhile, nobody's even really thinking about it like that. Um,
Right. Right.
but for me, taking a risk on black people, it was a risk, right? Just like it is radical to say I love black people out loud. Like it was a risk. It was radical. It was
Yeah.
something you didn't put these brands into photo shoots and stuff. And so I had started doing that back in like 2013. And but once I did it, I never went back. I was like, oh, okay, this is what was missing from my soul, like my
Yeah.
heart. Like these are the things that started to make me feel complete. Outside of my talent, I needed to find things that spoke to my soul. And when you're able to combine those two things and figure out how they fit together, then you start becoming whole, and you start becoming you, and you start, understanding like your purpose in the world, and walking in that space. And I just felt so much lighter as a human.
No, I love your vulnerability about the fear of having the photo shoot pulled, because I know Ocean Drive magazine very well, and I know it's a luxury magazine, and when you're working with other people and they get to dictate what you can and can't do and things like that, it can be pretty terrifying. And the part of that, right, is it's kind of like our PTSD of you're not sure how to show up, or how you can show up, and asking for permission. And so I'm so happy that you were able to have those experiences and them also be positive, because then that encourages you to continue going and be able to be solid about, and not that you didn't love black people, but being able to say that, right? Because even with me and with the spotlight and the work that I do, and there were times in the beginning where I'd be like, well, should I say black? I don't know. But then I'd go out and about and I'd hear some of our elected officials, and they're so loud and proud talking about black people. And I'm like, well, shoot, if they could do it, why can't why can't I do it as well? And so it just helped me to also be very clear about who I am, what I am doing, and the way that I'm going to speak about that. And so then let's talk about building the Hue Society, because all of that and wanting to see more black brands is what kind of led to you building this community. Tell us a bit about the Hue Society and the big inspiration behind it.
Yeah, so once I realized, and I was coming home to myself, Toni Morrison has this quote that I always say, like, when you get these big jobs and you get these degrees and all of that stuff, it's your job to take that back to the community. And it just reminded me of like why I started this whole journey, was to take the stuff back to the community. It wasn't to be a luxury wine. It wasn't to serve tables of people who really didn't even want me at the table, who were dismissing me. It was 100% to um, take it back to my community. And so that's what I started doing. I stopped working on the floor. I became an entrepreneur in 2015. And I always knew in my heart why black people weren't into wine. It's because we didn't see ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have a very unique set of ideals that we see in each other no matter what, right? And so I knew we didn't see each other. I knew we didn't see ourselves, and I was like, all right, well, let's test this out. So I'm going to dedicate all of my talents, bring them back into the community, all of these resources that I've built over the years, and I'm going to put on black events, wine events, and they're going to be all black through a black lens. So it's going to be our music, our food, our everything. It's going to definitely amplify black brands, but not limited to that, because you also have consumers who need to learn other spaces of wine. So um, that's what I started doing. So my first event under this, you know, new Habibi, this version of me, was called the Wine and Reggae Festival, because I knew two things: you either love wine or you love reggae. But I don't
Yeah.
know anybody in the world who don't like either, or at least they not in my circles. And so I did this event in Miami, and 3,000 people showed up.
Oh, wow. Your
It
first
was a
event.
first event, and it was a
Wow.
disaster. Because I wasn't prepared for that many people, and I didn't know like all of those people was going to. They showed up, but it was such a beautiful event. It was live music. I've always been very intentional of like thinking things through. Like I wanted to use local artists who were good but weren't getting the notoriety. We had black brands, but we also had other brands. Um, we did it in this little space. It really only held like 1,000 people. Like by the time the event was over, there wasn't even any juice left at the bar. People were so mad at me, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that. I understood that there is a demand, and that if you build it, they will come. Like the people will come. And so, but under that umbrella was sipping socials. That was just my thing. I was just going to do social events that were educational, but not like in your face educational, and black culture. That was it.
Yeah.
Black centered events. And so I've always done that. And then I ended up getting pregnant, and I didn't want to raise my daughter in Miami, so I was like, all right, what's the next blackest city? Well, I can raise her in the community, because I didn't want to go back north because it's cold. I don't like being cold. So I was like, I'm not going back to Philly. There's zero chances of that. So I was like, all right, Atlanta. Let's do Atlanta. So I came here to build my business, and basically I had two newborns. I had my business, and I
Yeah.
had my daughter, and raising them at the same time. They were the same age at this point,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I wanted to expand, because I understood that this was the formula. This was it. It was just being authentic and being yourself, and just
Yeah.
allowing other people to be themselves. And so I was like, all right, well, let's see how we can expand this. And I, started the Hue Society, and I was trying to figure out, like, I knew I wanted to start a society, and I knew I didn't just want it to be like about wine. I wanted it to be about us. But wine
Mm-hmm.
just happened to be the catalyst, and it happened to be the space that I had an expertise in, skills in. So I'm like thinking, like, we call this. I'm a huge Jay-Z fan, just from a business perspective, from a lyrical perspective. A huge Jay-Z fan. And so I was listening to 444, and he has this line, and he's like, what's better than 1 billion there too, especially if they're the same hue as you. And I was like, hue, that's it. Like that's it. It's a double
Mm.
entendre.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like it's perfect. The hues of wine, the hues of people, the hue society. So that's that's where it started. It started off as an online community. I just wanted to show that was, and I was so like, again, like the same hell bent I was on like getting to the top. I was so hell bent on showing black people that you could be yourself in this
Yeah.
space, and succeed. You can exist in a space and learn, and you can exist in a space and find joy. You just have to take it back and, like, stop trading yourself for it. And even if you can't, because that's a privilege, right? And I
Yeah.
acknowledge that it is a privilege to be yourself as a black person. It's wild, but it is a privilege,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially to do it 100% of the time. And when in 2015 I had decided I'm going to be myself 100% of the time. You're going to get these braids, you're going to get this hair, you're going to get these earrings, you're going to get this accent, everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not changing that. I'm not adjusting anymore. I did it for so many years to build my career. You will either adjust to me, you know exactly what you're getting, or we're not aligned, and that's okay too, because now you're not getting
Yeah.
on my nerves. Um, and so online, I built, the Hue Society. I built this community, and you could see it. And I was just posting things, long nails with champagne glasses, like things you just never think about. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
normalizing. That was my thing. It was just like I just needed to normalize what it looked like to be black in this space. Um, and then 2020 came, and I understood, like, okay, it's time to like start building the in-person community. So let's start building these chapters. And so, we have chapters all across the country, and we have 2 international chapters at this point. And the whole thing is just about creating access and resources. I
Yeah.
have power. I'm going to redistribute that power so that you have power too, and then you go redistribute your power. And as long as we're moving in that network and in that space, we'll always be good.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that the biggest thing with people in any kind of liberation or freedom or all those kinds of thought processes is you get to the point where it costs you something. There's a sacrifice, and then you're like, actually,
Mm-hmm.
I think y'all are all right, or you think that power is proximity to whiteness or white systems, and it's not. Your power is you. Your power is your authenticity. That's why they consistently cherry pick through it. They want
Yeah.
those parts of you, and if you don't let them, if you claim those parts back, then you are the power, right? And so I understand that completely, and I'm free, and I'm just trying to free as many people as possible. And even if that means you're just in these Hue Society meetings or events or whatever, and it's just a couple hours or a couple days, you free. But I promise you, once you taste that freedom, you're not ever going to go back.
Yeah.
It's in your mind. You might not immediately be able to act on it that way, but you always have it. You in your mind, you know what it's like. And so, little by little, it's just little things you start claiming. You might wear a bolder lip color, or you might get your hair braided, or you might wear your hair natural, or you pushing back on this until you are home back to yourself. And that's all I want. I just happen to do it through a wine venue.
I really love that, and I'm about to get on my high horse right now because I'm from and I still live in Prince George's County, and it is a suburb outside of DC, and it is the second wealthiest county in the United States for African Americans. We used to be the first, but a county next door, Charles County, has taken that title. Fine, we were the first for a long time, but you see the differences in Prince George's County versus the other counties that surround DC. And you see the difference in the resources that are available, the businesses that come, but most of all, the way that people speak about it, the perception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the main reasons that I started the Spotlight DMV because, even before it was a thing, I would just talk about I would see the headlines and I'm like, all they ever talk about are the negative things that are happening here. But I live here. I'm from here and I see the good. I see the new businesses that are coming, the organizations that are making impact. I see what we are doing here in the community. But that's not what is being spread outside. So I would just start talking about all those things. And even when people that live here would talk about where they live in a certain way, and I'm just like, I don't understand why you would talk about your own home in that way. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy to me. And so I like what you're saying about showing those images with the long nails and the bright lipsticks and, you know, things like that to normalize. Listen, you belong in this industry and you belong with all that you come with, whether it is the afro, whether you wear your hair straight, whether you want to wear bright colors or you are more conservative, whatever, you know, huge society that encompasses all of us, right? All and everything that we bring. And so I absolutely love that. And that's why I'm so excited that you are bringing Wine and Culture Fest here to the DMV. Well, I know you're saying DC, DMV, but I'm going to say you're bringing it to Prince George's County because it's going to be at National Harbor. At National Harbor, yes. And you know, there are going to be other events in DC as well, but the majority of it is at National Harbor. And I actually learned about Wine and Culture Fest last year. I had a friend that attended, and she's also a wine expert in this area. Shout out to my good friend, Dr. Faiza Carr. Yeah. So I was at the welcoming at Vino at the harbor, and I had such a good time meeting all the other people that came. And not only that, I met a wine brand, one of the founders of a wine brand, Imperial 202, as they were making a delivery. And that even started a whole relationship. And so that's kind of a testimony to what you're building and, you know, getting people together in the same room to be able to collaborate and to build and to set their minds free. So tell us about Wine and Culture Fest and why you wanted to bring it here again to the DMV area.
Yeah, last year was the first year we did it up there. It's been in Atlanta. I started it in New Orleans actually. Um, I mean, technically, I guess it started in Miami with that first wine and reggae festival,
Uh,
and so I just felt like this year we needed something that like comfort food. You know how like you're going through so much outside, you just want some comfort food. I felt like I wanted the event to feel like comfort this year. So I kind of like going back to the first event. And so, you know, the theme this year is Puerto Rhythms. We have Afro, Caribbean beats, and reggae, and all the rest of that stuff. Um, and the harbor was so beautiful last year. I know it's not technically DC, but they put DC on the thing. So I'm just like, everybody go back and forth about this. You know where it's at. And so, I just thought that it was DC is a rich city, you know, for
yeah.
blackness, and I just thought it was such an important thing to have it there again. It was so successful last year, um, and I mean this honestly, this is probably the best year. You didn't even come to the actual event, so if you thought
Nope.
like that was a small like thing. It was a get together. It was literally just like a little networking. Come pick up your bag, sip some wine, enjoy some people. But like the festival itself is an incredible. It's such an incredible feeling. We put this post out yesterday. It says, you know, it's not just a festival, it's healing because it is in so
Yeah.
many ways. Um, and anybody who's come will tell you that it's like, you know, and this year is the best year that we are doing it. We've grown so much and the name is so big now. You know, Friday we have Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett coming, and she's talking
Oh,
about tariffs, which
nice.
everybody right now is concerned about tariffs. You know, and that's sponsored by Dwayne Morris, a law firm, right? And then we have multiple different panels. We have Eric Adjapong and Anthony. He's, you know, Eric is his own person. We have Chef Anthony coming from Marcus DC that just opened, um, and we're on a panel called, you know, We Built This, and this is like real conversations about what it feels like or looks like to bring um, the diaspora into fine dining.
Yeah.
Um, we partnered with Black Women in Food, with Nina, and that's been an incredible partnership. And she does her own festival, her own conference that they just had, and that Dying Diaspora and Black Women in Foods is amazing. Um, so we have all of these dope partnerships, and this is all during the day. So during the day we have the conference portion of the festival in which you're going to learn something. You are able to. They're all value driven. We have master classes, cocktail classes, um, just these incredible things during the day, and then at night it's turn up. You got a few
Yes.
hours to go rest, to go figure it out, and you come back and we have these amazing DJs that are, local, and it's time to wine and wine. Like, get your glass, dance. We have so many vendors. We are tapped out of it. We had to close the vendor application. We have so many vendors. Everything from wine vendors that are pouring all the way to people that, make handmade jewelry, their food vendors. It's going to be incredible. And then Saturday, we have the same thing. We have a master class at Jackson Family Wines, and then we have the fireside with me and Taraji P. Henson, who's also a DC native, and so
Yes.
she's coming home. We're going to do a fireside during the day, um, and then again at night. It's a turn up, but this turn up is very special because we have a rice festival on Saturday, so we invite chefs from all around the country. It was something I conceptualized a few years ago, just thinking about how rice has played such a huge part in our economic system here in this country. And, the enslaved, they picked rice, um, but everybody thinks it was cotton, but it was rice that put the economics in this country and a lot of other countries on the map. And so it for me was like a reclamation, like kind of paying homage and taking that back again. And so rice is such an interesting concept because you have the socioeconomics of it. When you're poor and hungry, you eat rice and honey,
Yeah.
right? When you're
Yeah.
rich, you're eating sushi and all kinds of rice. Um, and then it crosses cultures. Most cultures cook rice in their own way, which I just find that so fascinating. And so we invite chefs from all across the country, and it's been such a gift to watch how that part of the festival has grown because we went from these chefs that I was like begging to come, like, hey, can you come cook some rice and make their dishes and stuff like that. To we have master chefs and people who've been competing on TV shows and um, Top Chef and all of these things that are all
Yes.
coming. We have a ton of chefs coming this year, and they're all amazing chefs. Um, and the other fascinating thing about this rice festival this year is it's sponsored by Maruga Hills, which is ancient, like off the real rice that from our ancestors, and
Oh,
like
wow.
it's incredible. And we have Chaz Brown is going to do a demo using that rice, and I mean it's just to get black people together is one thing to, but then to dig into the nuance of us through food and through
Yeah.
something like rice. It's just such an incredible experience, and it's like you kind of like tasting around the world. And so we have all of these different diasporic dishes that are coming, and I'm so excited because I just feel like this this is what we're seeking. But we need you to show up, right? Like
Right.
we build all of these things, um, and we just need people to support it and to show up and to come and show like this is actually the thing you want. We have this really cute activation. It's called Sweet Sweet, and so we have a dessert artist coming to create all of these like super beautiful, delicious desserts, and we're pairing them with Seven Daughters Moscato, Taraji's wine, and that's really what it is. But it's a live activation. He's going to show you how to. He's going to do the desserts in front of you. You can do one of your own desserts. There's so many different components which you can come and find, whether you're a wine lover or a food lover or,
Mm-hmm.
or intellectual or whatever. There's so many different components. I try to be very intentional about hitting all of these different strides and what it looks like or feels like to be a part of this. And it's not just like this drunken festival where you're coming guzzling wine, which you
Right.
don't really care about. You're just there to get drunk. But it's like, no, the music is going to move your soul. The food is going to, move your palate. The learning, if you are a wine professional, you want to learn something, you get to do that. If you're not a wine professional, you just want to be around black people and just like let loose with
Yeah.
all of this nonsense that's going on in the world for a day, for an hour, for here you go. Like this is it. We built it right here for you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what you said earlier about, getting an education, but it's in a different form, right? Like you might not even know that you're going to this festival to be educated, but you will be educated, and then you're going to take that information back and spread it to your friends and the people that you talk to and that you share with. So that's what I really love about it. And yesterday I actually got to experience a mixology class with Andra AJ Johnson. She is the beverage director at Serenata DC, and she's going to be a part of everything that's happening over at Wine and Culture Fest in July. And it was such a wonderful experience, guys. If you have not been to Serenata DC in Union Market, trust me, you do not want to miss this experience. AJ was amazing. Listen, she was built
She
to
is.
talk.
AJ's the GOAT. AJ is a living legend. Like AJ is the GOAT. And I'm so happy that she's like getting her flowers. She's been getting them, but like this year is so big for her, and I'm just really excited about everything that she's doing. And I'm really excited that I'm always incredibly grateful or excited for anybody who believes in me or believes in what I'm building enough to
Yeah.
be a part of it. So I'm just so grateful to her for coming and lending us her skills because she's skilled. She's incredible. Like I can't wait.
Yes. And so, on that note, guys, we need y'all to show up. And I have a giveaway happening for a pair of tickets. Head over to the Spotlight DMV on Instagram to enter the giveaway. It goes through this Thursday. A chance to experience this at no cost. Two tickets, you and a friend, you and your boo.
You bring the girls.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Well, thank you so much for coming on the spotlight, for bringing all of this to Prince George's County, for wanting to partner with little old me. Last
Oh,
year when I attended, I was like, I got to get to that festival, and then when I got the email, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even like. I always am so grateful when people see the work that I'm doing. It just feels like, okay, you're doing something. Is it? You don't always get that response, right? That people are seeing it or interacting with it. But every once in a while, somebody will say something, and I'm like, okay, let me keep going. Let me keep going, because it is easy to get discouraged. But we gotta
yeah,
keep
but that's
pushing.
important. That's important, and I think it's so important. Like, yeah, we have some really huge influencers that we work with. I also think it's important to look at people and what they're building, and not just the numbers that they've gotten to so far or whatever. It's like, what's the impact that you
Yeah.
are trying to create, and how can we help amplify that? And I think that that's important, and it doesn't need to be a quid pro quo kind of thing. Like, we're a community. We are everything you build is built for me. Everything I build is built for you. And if we move in those ways, then we'll all continue to excel and develop.
Exactly. What's better than one billionaire? Two. Love it, love it. Well, thank you again for joining us, for sharing your journey and everything that you're doing to make wine culture more inclusive, intentional, and joyful. And again, to everyone watching, Wine and Culture Fest is coming to Prince George's County, to DC, to the DMV area this July 17th to the 19th, and you don't want to miss it. And again, I'm giving away a pair of free tickets on Instagram at the Spotlight DMV on Instagram. Make sure you head over there. So yes, and then if you miss the giveaway, hit up wineandculturefest.com so you can buy your tickets and support. This has been Behind the Event, where we bring you the real story behind the moments that move our region. We will see you next time. Bye. Okay, the live is